Hi, this is Andrea Vicari, and you're listening to Jazz Doodles on jazzlondonradio.com. In today's show, I'm going to be interviewing saxophonist Mark Lockhart. That interview will be coming up very shortly. And in fact, most of the music today is centred around groups that Mark's performed in. Mark Lockhart is a saxophonist and was first well known for his association with the big band Loose Tubes. And then he joined forces with Hugh Warren, Dudley Phillips and Martin France in a group called Perfect Houseplants. As well as a lot of jazz bands, he's also played in sessions with pop groups such as Radiohead, Prefab Sprout and Stereolab. And recently he was actually on stage in the acclaimed opera Anna Nicole at the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden. He's also had a long association with drummer Seb Rochford's band Polar Bear. So here's a track from Polar Bear. That was Polar Bear, and the track was called Polar Bear, Standing and Ready. And the album was called Dim Lit, and that was recorded in 2004 and featured Mark Lockhart on sax, Pete Wareham on tenor sax as well, Tom Herbert double bass, and Seb Rochford on the drums. So here's the interview with Mark. I caught up with him last week, and he was happy to tell me about all the work he's done and about his new album, Melita. So I'm joined here by Mark Lockhart. Hi.
Hi.
Saxophonist, composer, educator, pretty good cook, I'm sure, you know.
Oh, thank you, Andrew.
There's quite a lot of things there. Okay, you've just made an album, Melita, which I had a listen to, and which I enjoyed very much.
Thank you.
And I just wondered, perhaps if you'd like to talk a little bit about it, maybe the concept behind it and who's on the album.
Yeah, I've always wanted to work with a trio. I've always loved some of those records. There's a Paul Bley album with Steve Swallow and Jimmy Guthrie that I really like. And then the Garbrek, Egberto Gismonti, Charlie Hayden trio, I always liked that. So I've always wanted to do something as a trio. And I first started working with Jasper and Liam on an album called In Deep in 2009. And that was the first time that we played together. And then this opportunity came up to play in America at the Rochester Jazz Festival because they wanted the Ellington thing, but we couldn't all go because of obviously financial things.
That's the big band.
That's the
the
7-piece band, yeah. So I formed this trio for that really, and we did a little gig at the Vortex and then went off to Rochester Jazz Festival and played there. So it was kind of straight in really with that band.
That was in America.
That was in America, in New York, Rochester International Jazz Festival.
What's that like then?
It was great, yeah. I mean, it was a bit strange going all that way with a brand new band, but it was lovely. It was a lovely way to start this group. And then I thought, we must record this. And the idea of it is that it features all our writing. So it's not just my writing. Liam's written a lot of it, Jasper too. And it's very fluid, so that some of the tunes are very simple. So the idea is that we can take the music, especially in performance, take the music into other places, not
through improvisation.
Through improvisation, so the structures are quite simple with a lot of the music. I mean, not all of them, but some of them.
I mean, what struck me about it was I named it like chamber jazz because it doesn't have any drums on it. And actually, I didn't kind of clock that it didn't have any drums on for a few tracks, and I suddenly thought, there aren't any drums. So actually it works really well because it didn't even occur to me. It was just after a while I felt I was really drawn into the listening because there's no drums, and so everything's very clear and very, very obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's really nice if you didn't suddenly miss the drums. That's kind of important that people don't suddenly miss the drums. I mean, the thing that I've learned from this is that the sonic landscape is so different. Drums take up so much room sonically, so much top end, and we don't have that. So it was really difficult to mix this album, actually. I had to keep coming back and trying to working out how I wanted it to sound. But I love the sound of it now. But it made me realise that so much, when you listen to CDs, so much of this, the sound is taken up with the drum kit. So there are challenges with not having drums. But
also keeping
rewards.
keeping time as well, having strong sense of time.
Yeah.
And sorry, you were saying there were rewards for not having drums.
Well, the rewards of not having drums, I mean, because drums. I mean, I obviously love playing with drummers. I love playing with Seb Rochford, like I did on my last album before this. But I think the rewards is that there's an awful lot of space, and in a way you can be more free with the music and take it, as I said before, take it in different places.
So let's have a listen to a track. So I asked you to choose one of your favourite, well, I suppose they're all your favourite, but just one that you'd like to play on the show. So what are we going to listen to now?
We could listen to Squared, which is somehow it's a kind of bluegrassy type tune, but it just kind of came out, which I like.
Okay, so here's Squared. Mark, your last album, I understand, was Ellington in Anticipation, which is quite different to Melita, which we were talking about previously. I wondered, what inspired you to write an album of Ellington arrangements, and kind of what were the challenges and maybe how this project came about?
Yeah, I mean, the Ellington album actually came about through my teaching work at Trinity, because
Trinity Laban Conservatoire.
Yeah, Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance, and I was looking around for things for the students to play, and realised that a lot of them didn't really know Ellington's music much. So I started to kind of do some little arrangements, and then gradually they became big arrangements and kind of deconstructions of the thing. So I changed the harmony, and some of them I just kept the melodic fragments and did my own thing on it. So that was really interesting. So a lot of that music was workshopped at Trinity Laban, actually, with the students.
That was for a classic big band or a small ensemble?
No, it was a small ensemble.
Okay.
It was a combo that I do, and then I would take the ideas back home and work on them, and then do a bit more work and then bring them back. But it was a wonderful opportunity to have, that kind of workshop set up, if you like, at college to see if it was going to work. So that's how that started, and then gradually it expanded. I started off with Satin Doll. That was one of my first tunes that I did that way, and then Take the A Train and
all the classics.
All the classics, yeah.
I mean, I've heard the album, and it is very clever in not in a makes it sound contrived, in a very natural way, but it's a lovely piece, lots of lovely pieces of music that are very well known. So although sometimes it's hard to hear the relationship between that and the original, at some point there'll be an obvious reference, I think, whether it's the melody or maybe something. So it's a subtle reference at times, isn't it, to some of the original material?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there are references throughout it all. Some of it I've kept intact, actually, some of the melodies and the harmonies. So it's a mixture, and I think that's a really fine thing to tread. I mean, I love Ellington. I don't really like hearing Ellington recreated. I don't really see the point in that. So I listen to Ellington, original Ellington. So when I did this, I thought, well, what's the point of recreating it? I might as well
transform it
and do something with it.
We ought to hear a piece from this incredible album. So what did you choose to play next?
Well, I thought My Caravan might be a good one, because the reason why I've called it My Caravan is it doesn't have anything to do with the caravan until the end. And then at the end you hear the caravan melody played quite a lot, but the whole of the first part of this track is my kind of composition. So I took a risky decision and decided that Ellington didn't need these royalties for this tune, as I'd written most of it myself, so I called it My Caravan.
Wow, that was My Caravan. Well, we got to hear the tune at the end. A great piece of music there. Moving on to your skills as a saxophonist. You're in demand, I think I can say that. You're in lots of other groups. You're in Polar Bear and...
I'm in Loose Tubes, but I've always been in Loose Tubes.
And also...
whenever we work together.
Also Nikki Isles, you're on her album as well.
Nikki Isles has a lovely group called The Printmakers with Norm Winston, yeah.
And I think I heard you on the Pete Churchill latest album, Stories to Tell.
Yes, I guested on that record, yeah.
So I would say you're fairly in demand. You're also a prolific composer, as we've obviously been discussing. And I just wondered, is one of them more important? Are they both tied in together?
That's a good question. I wrestle constantly with the balance between playing and writing, because I love to write and it's important for me to write, but I don't have enough time to spend writing. That's the trouble. So I think in a way playing, I still have to think of that as my priority. If I've got a few hours in the day, I'll tend to go and practice rather than write, but it's an unhappy kind of thing that I've got. I'm not quite happy with the balance of it,
I think that's probably true of many professional jazz musicians.
I think we all wrestle with that, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with your writing, I mean, what inspires you? What kind of gets you excited? What kind of gets you started on something? Is it usually a trigger, or are you just constantly writing?
I think I get excited if I think I've found something that doesn't sound like anything else, which of course it does sound like something else, but that's the thing that excites me. Is if I'm playing away, if I'm improvising, and something that comes out and I think, oh, that's unusual, that gets me excited. And that often becomes actually the idea for the whole piece. It's this little thing, whatever it is, whether it's a chord sequence or a motific idea or a little rhythm with a bass line. But that's the thing that I get excited about.
Do you also get inspired if someone or you decide to do a project. So like with the trio, with Jasper Hoyby and
Liam
Noble. I mean, the fact that you had that, was that an inspiration for you to write music? I know you didn't write all of it, but does an ensemble kind of get you thinking about writing as well?
Yeah, totally. I mean, Liam, as you know, has an extraordinarily kind of individual approach to the instrument, and that was a big part of the things that I wrote for this band, was writing for him and Jasper, and knowing that they would approach it in a certain way, they'd have a certain sound. And there's some quite quirky things on the Melita album that I like, I quite like jazz not to be too serious sometimes, so.
I think there's always been a bit of humour in music, though, hasn't there? I mean,
yeah.
Well, you could even say Thelonious Monk, full of
There's
humour.
certainly a lot of humour in that, yeah.
So let's have a listen to a track from In Deep. That was a track called Surfacing from In Deep. I had some choice in that because it actually has quite an extended piano solo from Liam Noble, so I thought that was quite appropriate. You've been playing jazz a long time, all of us have. In your earlier years, you were part of Loose Tubes, the big band that I kind of changed the face of jazz, I think, at the time. I know as a youngster, I was very inspired by seeing this band of, young musicians playing what I thought was quite hip, fun music and enjoying themselves like mad on stage. I think the visual thing was really important, and having people like Ashley Slater, who are obviously extreme characters, the writing, people like Django Bates and Chris Batchelor and stuff. Did you write anything for it?
No, I never did.
You were very young then, weren't you?
And I was very intimidated by the standard of the writing, so I never wrote anything.
I did think it was a really important, well, for me definitely, and a lot of my generation, although we're not too dissimilar in age, that's why I say you were quite a young member of the band. So how was that experience? How was it to be suddenly in this amazing group that was really popular and doing quite a lot of work?
I mean, it was an amazing thing, because I just come out of college and then we go and do Loose Tubes gigs, and we get reviews in all the national papers, So, I mean, it was an incredible start to my career. As you say, it was a lot of fun on stage. Everyone had a good time. I mean, the quality of the writing was so good. I mean, Django's writing is amazing. It still sounds amazing.
He was still quite young then, wasn't he? I mean, he was he in his late 20s?
He's the same age as me, so...
I know, then he would have been only in his early 20s, wouldn't he?
Yeah, we were like 25, something like that, 24, 25. Yeah, so, I mean, it was an incredible start, really. It was the thing that launched me. I mean, there were lots of saxophone players who were better than me, but I was in this band that kind of got a lot of success, and the other thing, it gave us all confidence to kind of develop our own identity, because it wasn't like a normal big band, everyone was an individual voice. I mean, in fact, actually, in that sense, it was a bit like Ellington's band, where you have all these distinct voices all sticking out in the section. You have Harry Carney, you can tell it's Harry Carney in the section, you can tell it's Paul Gonsalves in the section. It was a bit like that in this band, we'd all kind of have our own sound quite early on. Ian Bellamy had his own way of phrasing, playing, Julian Arguelles.
Tim Whitehead, he was a bit older than everyone else, but he had a real sort of quite a funky edge to his playing. I remember he could just really take the band in a completely different direction through soloing. Yeah,
he had a fantastic kind of different way of playing, Tim. Yeah, it was great.
And the interesting thing is that band, it had its life period, you know, and then it, as a lot of things do, it sort of, everyone kind of went and did their own thing. But actually it's reformed, and I know you had a gig at Cheltenham Jazz Festival, which kind of inspired some new tunes and stuff. I saw the band at Ronnie's and it was great. It was just like, you know, all the old tunes and a few new ones, and I was singing along. Not that anyone hopefully heard me, but I just wondered how it is when you all come back. Maybe being that bit older, you probably feel much more confident as players, but is the atmosphere the same? Is it different? Is it the same, or things changed?
I mean, it was quite amazing when this whole reunion thing happened, because no one really quite knew what it was going to be like, and we got together in the rehearsal room for the first rehearsal, and we spent the whole morning just nattering, catching up. You know, we didn't actually play a note for ages. And a lot of things were the same. The humour was the same. I mean, there was so much silly humour in that band. And that was all the same, and we were all laughing at some of the jokes that we were laughing at 25 years ago. And then we started to play. The first tune we played on that first rehearsal for the reunion was Yellow Hill, which was one of the first pieces that we played back in the 80s. And it was immediately obvious that nothing much had changed. We'd all got older and we were probably better players, but as the day went on and people soloed, everyone kind of sounded the same as they did in 1983, which was a little bit shocking, really. You know, because you like to think, oh, I've got so much better, you know. And I think we have. I mean, I have over the years, but basically the fundamental things that were there in the 1980s have always been there. And that was quite a sobering thought, really.
So you're a writer, you're a performer, and you've got a position at Trinity Laban as a jazz professor. You're also a tutor on the Dordogne Jazz Summer School, and I'm sure you do other things. So I don't know if there's anything else you do, and maybe you market your bands and stuff. But is it difficult for you to do all these different things? How does it work?
It is difficult, funny enough. Yes, and I have a very patient boss with Simon Purcell at Trinity Laban, who puts up with me not being around sometimes. But yeah, it's a juggling act. I mean, you know what it's like. You end up, it's not just being a musician, is it? You have to be a manager, you have to fill out arts council applications, you have to run a record label sometimes, all these things you have to do. And it doesn't really get any easier. I mean, I've got someone helping now with Melita gigs, but I'm still having to do a lot of it. And even this Melita record is coming out on quite a nice label, Edition Records, which is run by a guy called Dave Stapleton. It's very professionally run. But even then, there's always something to do. There's always something that I have to send him or chase up. Or the other day, he sent something. He said, "Can you send me a little thing saying hello in Hawaiian?" Because he's sending a copy to the Hawaiian radio station, and they wanted me to say, "Hi, this is Mark Lockhart. Hello, this is Mark Lockhart from England."
I thought it was a aloha, but that was probably just.
And I think it is aloha.
Is it?
It is aloha. Yeah.
Aloha. Okay, so it kind of leads on to my last question, and I often ask people this. So, in an ideal world, 5 years' time, in the future, if anything could happen, what would you be doing in 5 years' time? What would your ideal situation be?
I'd like to be doing what I'm doing now. I mean, I'd like there to be more opportunities to see things through. So you have a project, you make a band, and we've spoken about this before, haven't we? People get excited about a record and blah 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 blah, and you get a tour together, but there doesn't really seem to be any infrastructure to kind of carry on with that. You don't really get any help with it. I mean, you can apply to the Arts Council and stuff, but I'd like to see that being a little bit easier. Oh, Melita, oh yes, it's an established band. Great. Here's a load of gigs.
10 festivals.
Here's 10 festivals. You don't have to phone up and hassle people to get them. But I think that's probably very unrealistic, actually.
Sorry, you can have unrealistic fantasies on this show. Yeah, aspirations. Maybe you shouldn't say fantasies, but aspirations. Yeah. And it's quite interesting how various people answer that. But I think that would be a fantastic future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. You've been a very inspiring and entertaining guest for today's show. Hopefully listeners will immediately go out and buy all your albums and experience the music for themselves in its totality. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
During that interview, a track was played that was unannounced, and that was The Last Word, composed by flautist Eddie Parker for Loose Tubes. And the album is called Open Letter from 1988. And you've heard solos there by John Harborne on trombone and Mark himself, Mark Lockhart, on tenor. So the last tune for today is another one by the Melita Trio, and this one is called One for Us. And thank you to Mark Lockhart for his interview. And that's all from me today, Andrea Vicari, on Jazz Doodles on jazzlondonradio.com.